this report, and he assured me that St. Simon's down in Boulders. Folks, this is Chris Wyatt reporting from South Africa.
Hello, folks. Welcome back to Chris Wyatt Reports at a special time today on the 6th of February, 2024. It is 7:42 in the morning. A little bit later start than I scheduled, which was 7:30. Apologies for that. Thanks for tuning in to everyone who's here from around the world. Pleasure to have you join me once again today, but I do have events today that will be tying me up throughout the business day and while there's daylight. So I do need to do my broadcast early so folks can catch it after the fact, but hopefully people are able to catch it now too. I see some people who weren't aware of the broadcast yesterday did catch it today. Thanks for being here, folks. I didn't have a chance to put it in all the groups. So Monray Sieberts is here, Jan Fillon, Mr. Punisher, hey Mr. Punisher, Sue Walsh, Val Cooper, Christine Ellers, Gypsy Backpackers, Erica's made it, and then Tony Nage is in from Canada. George Steinberg says he's out busy making hay. Well, I assume he's really baling hay. He said baling hay, not making hay. That's a phrase for making money, but or making progress. But baling hay, I assume he's doing that. That's something I really enjoyed as a kid, working on a farm. One of the things I actually enjoyed, a lot of hard labor, a lot of time and effort went into it, but I really enjoyed baling hay. I don't know why. It was always hot. It was dusty. It was a lot of work, and but I enjoyed it. I don't know. It was just that whole thing about, stacking the hay up on the wagon, and then as it was picked up in the field, showing you accomplished something, then taking it back, put it in a barn and storing it was, I don't know, strangely rewarding. I miss those days, although I'm not up for that these days. Dusty says 2:40 in South Africa indeed. Brian says waiting for load shedding to end. Vilma Erasmus is here. And who else we got there? Tony says video says they came through South Africa. What's this? Wagner and ISIS caught by Ukrainians in Sudan. Didn't see that. Okay. Didn't see that. Anyway, Erica says, hello on lunch break. Good to catch you live, Colonel. Good, Erica. Good to see you again. Erica Holtzkamp, that is. I don't think we've seen you recently, Erica. I hope that you're well. I'm glad to see that you're on a break from lunch. Wow, it's a bit of a late break. Must have been working hard today. Lots to get in discussion today, not the least of which is the corrupt Biden administration violated the First Amendment of the Constitution with regard to American citizens by pressuring Amazon, according to the Washington Times, by pressuring Amazon to censor Americans over their speech and their purchase of books. They spent a week haranguing Amazon. These are criminals. These are rogue criminals who deserve to be before a federal judge for their purported crimes. The federal government has no right to restrict what we read. The federal government has no right to restrict what we speak. The federal government has no right to restrict our freedom of worship and our ability to assemble to seek redress from our government. However, this corrupt administration and the bureaucracy under the Trump administration have habitually violated federal law and the U.S. Constitution. They are rogue. They are criminals. The FBI, DHS, the intelligence agencies, the administrations themselves. These are people who must be hauled before a court and tried for their crimes against the American people. This is the last great, only bastion for liberty in the world, and it is being undermined from within, eaten alive by criminals who are facing no consequences for their context. Serial pathological liars like White House press secretaries should also be brought before the docket for their Joseph Goebbels-like behavior, lying to the American people on a daily basis. It's just unbelievable. Anybody apparently can be the press secretary. You just have to dye your hair pink and pretend you have 5 pronouns and tell people you're a different sexuality than you actually are, and you'll get the job. Gus is here. Welcome, Gus. Hakan Engman in from the Netherlands. Okay, executive order can close the border instantly, but blames Congress instead. Tony, I assume you're talking about the border bill, the abomination that was brought by the Biden or by the Congress being put out there now. This border bill, this immigration reform is not immigration reform. It is American surrender. American surrender. This is what this is. We are surrendering our sovereignty to criminal alien invaders who do not speak our languages, who follow our faiths, who do not believe in American ideals. These are people who are not coming here to become Americans, but coming here to rapage and to pillage and to destroy this country from within. And this is being facilitated by a criminal regime in Washington, D.C. and numbers of states around the country like California and New York who are now crying, and Illinois, who are crying about immigrants. Well, they're not immigrants, they're criminal alien invaders, and you asked for it. You declared yourselves sanctuary states, sanctuary cities for foreign nationals who have no business in our country whatsoever. You think it works that way around the world? Why don't you just go and see how long you can stay in Myanmar because you decide you like it there? Just go try to live in New Zealand and see how long you last there because you like it there. Well, they have sovereignty and they exercise their sovereignty, and we have a right to our sovereignty. And these criminals in Washington and in state capitals around the country who are undermining this society from within should be hauled before court and charged. But of course, they run this political system and they are destroying civilization as we know it. Civilization is at risk here, folks. We are at risk of devolving into absolute nonsense here very soon if this doesn't get handled by elections in 2024. People voting these criminals out of office. And I'm talking about Republicans, Democrats. It doesn't matter who they are. I'm talking about the ANC, the EFF. You must vote these criminals out of office. These people are shameful. They have no shame whatsoever. None whatsoever. Wolf K is here. Welcome to you. There are saboteurs. Men create. Yeah, well, these are not asylum seekers. This is utter nonsense. Notice that a significant percentage of the asylum seekers who fled to Germany from Ukraine were military-age men. Those were cowards, not asylum seekers. Women and children largely left behind. Had the women and children fled with the men, you can make a different argument. When the women and children stay behind and the men flee, we see cowards, not asylum seekers. Working your butt off as you do to fly to Namibia next week. No, I'm sure it won't be a problem by then. Things, unless there's a funeral at the airport, but I don't think so. I think you'll be fine. Going to Namibia next week. Yeah, Hage King. Yeah, we covered that story previously. All right, let's get on to the news here. And at this early hour, well, that is not the news. That's another window. There's the news. All right. So some analysis here regarding election coming from the ANC, from News 24, sharing an analyst view of what's going to happen. It's a depressing outlook, and I think it's also incorrect. Let's hope it's incorrect. According to News 24, this story, printed by Siamtanda Kappa, says ANC will lose support and the top 6 parties will dominate. I believe that to be true. Smaller ones will get about 4% of the vote in total. That's probably true. There are 356 parties registered for this election in South Africa. A plethora of new political parties contesting elections will have little effect on the support of the 6 major political parties, according to data released by a poll conducted late last year by the Inclusive Society Institute, which noted that small political parties were likely to get only 4% of the vote. Daryl Swanepoel, the chief executive officer of the Institute, said the 6 big political parties, ANC, DA, EFF, IFP, Action SA, and Freedom Front Plus, will share the bulk of the vote. I agree with that. ANC will see a massive decline, according to the poll, but will remain the party with the largest support. That I'm not... Well, they will. Yes, ANC will be party with the largest support. They will have more than anyone else. That I agree with, and I've said that all along. But I question them getting 48%. That seems ludicrously high. That's higher than they got in the last elections, municipal elections. They're not going to get 48%. Just not going to happen. Not going to happen. There's a chance for more parties to register for the election date. There are 356 currently registered for the general election. In a high turnout scenario, not in the immediate turnout scenario, the ANC gets 48%, the DA gets 20%, and the minor parties go down. So if you remove the top 6 parties, all the other parties only get 4%. That's a high turnout. I'm not convinced it'll be a high turnout, particularly in places like KwaZulu-Natal, where ANC voters stayed home in droves last time. The EFF is not as stupid as they appear to be. They have made it clear that their effort is focused on KwaZulu-Natal, and they know that because ANC is mortally wounded in KwaZulu-Natal. The insurrection of 2021 precipitated and committed by acolytes of Jacob Zuma and his allies in the bureaucracy in the South African government who refused and failed to take action to prevent the carnage and chaos, left a bitter taste in the mouths of South Africans. Subsequently, the massive floods that occurred in KZN and the failure of ANC-led municipalities and ANC-led province and ANC-led national government to address these issues in the first place, to prevent people from building makeshift squatter camps in floodplains, leading to deaths of many people and carnage of an unimaginable level, has pissed off a lot of voters in KZN. Also, the Inkatha Freedom Party has shown a degree of competence in the municipalities under its control, and this has convinced some more additional voters that, well, someone other than the ANC can rule, and we need to vote for someone else. Now, people make a lot of hay out of the Jacob Zuma situation, but Jacob Zuma is not drawing a lot of Zulu support to his MK party. And his dispute with the ANC further divides the ANC, and this is a challenge. So, do not expect to see the ANC do well in KZN, in the Western Cape, or in Gauteng province, which they'll lose. They will lose Gauteng province to a coalition of opposition parties. They're likely to lose KZN to a coalition of opposition parties, and they will lose the Western Cape to an outright majority by the Democratic Alliance, despite their own failures in the province in the eyes of many voters. Yep. So fuel prices will be increasing from midnight tonight, just hours away for South Africans. You'll be paying more for petrol. Yep, just right around the corner, folks. The Automobile Association warned that motorists to brace for fuel price hikes on Wednesday. Thanks to rising international oil prices and weakened rand and government-controlled fuel prices, which is communism, not free market capitalism. Both grades of petrol, 93 and 95, will increase by 75 cents a liter. Good Lord, 75 cents a liter. Diesel, the wholesale price of high sulfur diesel will raise by 73 cents. And the wholesale price of paraffin will rise by 53 cents. That makes 93 unleaded, 22.92, 22 Rand 92, 95, 23.24, diesel 21.36, and diesel 0.0005, 21.43. Wow, that's inland. But at the coast, the prices are 22.52, 20.64, and 20.72. South Africans bearing the cost of communist control of the marketplace. Now, you might say, Chris, but if international oil prices rise, won't they also rise even if this isn't communism? True. But prices drop immediately in a free market when the price pressure drops. That doesn't happen in South Africa. You get stuck paying more for fuel for a month before they adjust the prices, because that's what commies do. The free market adjusts on its own based on supply and demand. Well, the EFF is taking its case to court and losing its backside. Floyd Shivambu's bid to prevent Parliament from taking his pay over the VBS scandal is struck from the court rolls. EFF Deputy Leader Floyd Shivambu's assertion that Parliament finding him guilty of unethical conduct for accepting VBS money from his brother damages his reputation and will harm the EFF in the election lacks validity, the Western Cape High Court found. EFF's campaign to avoid parliamentary accountability hit the skids when the Western Cape High Court scrapped his urgent application from the court roll. Yeah, so here are the payments he received, and why isn't he in jail? August 18th, 2017, he got 100,000 Rand. August 24th, he got 30,000 Rand. August 26th, he got 50,000 Rand. Floyd Shivambu got 180,000 Rand. For what? What did he do? Why is a bank paying him 180,000 Rand? Why is he not in jail? Why is he in Parliament? There you go. They said they should take 9 days of his pay. They should take his freedom away for his alleged criminal activity, prosecute him, and put him behind bars where he belongs, if in fact he committed the crimes. There you go. The EFF loses a court bid to stop its prison suit wearing jackasses from marching, attacking, charging against the State of the Nation address, the President of the Republic once again. The EFF has suffered another blow in its ludicrous effort to overturn the court's decision. The party lost its bid to interdict Parliament from applying newly adopted House rules that will prevent the chaos that has characterized its idiotic conduct at State of the Nation addresses. The rules, which were adopted in December, no member will be allowed to interrupt the president when he makes his first speech at the opening of Parliament after a national election. The same will apply in Sona. The new rules also outlaw gross disorderly conduct and allow the speaker to remove members from the virtual platform for unruly behavior. In its urgent application, the EFF sought to prevent Parliament from applying these rules at this year's State of the Nation address on Thursday, which they are barred from attending. They should have been arrested on domestic terrorism or insurrection charges for their rushing of the stadium, putting in jeopardy the lives of the protection detail of the president, those present in Parliament, and the President of the Republic. Not someone we care about, but he is the president, does deserve protection. The behavior of the EFF at the State of the Nation address was criminal, and they should be in prison with those red jumpsuits, not in Parliament. Well, Central Karoo will be out without electricity for at least a week as a consequence of those windstorms knocking down infrastructure. Possibly up to a week. Generators are being dispatched to several towns to keep essential services running after weekend storms caused power lines to collapse throughout the Central Karoo. Heavy rain and gale force winds caused 7 power pylons to collapse on Saturday, and it's expected to be a prolonged outage for residents. Escon informed us that the repair project is complex, and though they are working as fast as possible, repairs will most likely take several days. Local government environmental affairs and developing planning MEC for the Western Cape, Anton Bradel, said today. We need to ensure our hospitals and schools have water and sufficient diesel to run generators. We're also sending generators to institutions that do not have generators, said Bradel. Well, there you go. If Escon was out for a profit, they would get that up as quick as possible, because every moment they're not selling electricity, they're not making money. But since it's not a profit-driven, capital-based free market enterprise, but rather a corrupt parastatal based on patronage and kleptocracy, it's urgent action, probably not as urgent as it should be. There you have it. Felipe, a 17-year-old teen, was killed after allegedly filming a Spaza shop extortion. Felipe residents are reeling from the murder of a 17-year-old who was shot several times with a rifle and killed, reportedly for filming an extortion incident in progress. The suspect saw him and gave chase at around 7 p.m. He ran into a house where he was shot. A leaked report read the victim was busy recording suspects busy extorting a Spaza shop. Suspect saw him making a video and started chasing him. He ran to a shack where he stayed and was followed. The boy ran into his home and closed the door. One suspect fired 2 shots at the door and kicked the door open. They demanded his cell phone, which had the evidence. He demanded the cell phone. Another male came rushing in, asked where the boy was. The suspect was armed with a rifle. He fired 4 shots in the lounge and the kitchen areas. He managed to shoot the boy, wounding him in the arm and upper body. They grabbed the cell phone and fled the scene. They took the wrong phone and left the cell phone of the boy. The boy was taken to Mitchell's Plain Hospital. 8 rifle cartridges, 1 9mm cartridge, and 1 9mm round were found on the scene. The cell phone of the victim was taken from the scene and handed in at Nyanga Police Station. He died at the hospital, and police have opened a murder charge. Unbelievable, ladies and gentlemen. A young man put his life at risk to catch the criminals shaking down legitimate business owners in the Cape Flats, and paid with his life from these criminals. These criminal syndicates operate with impunity because of the acquiescence, the hood, wink, and nod from a corrupt government in South Africa and a corrupt police force that allow this sort of activity to terrorize South Africans. It is time for South Africans to get rid of the ANC in this year. How much clearer does it have to be for residents? Stop voting based on your skin color. If you vote for someone based on someone having the same skin color as you, you're a moron. Whether you're white, you're black, you're brown, it doesn't matter. You shouldn't vote for people because you went to high school and this person was your teacher, and so you're going to vote for them. You should vote for the person who's the best candidate. Of course, in South Africa, you don't vote for the person, you vote for the party. So that right is taken away from you. And we've seen what the ANC is capable of. Very little. We've seen what it's incapable of, and that's pretty much every aspect of governance, from electricity to ports to rails to law enforcement to prosecution to public safety to budgets to infrastructure. Everything the ANC touches turns to total crap. They have destroyed the most productive industrial country in the entire continent of Africa in less than 3 decades. Something that took 3 centuries to build, they have destroyed in less than 3 decades. Anyone who votes for the ANC deserves misery and suffering, because that is what the ANC delivers for you, misery and suffering. Over 40 million South Africans living off of public assistance as a consequence of failed macroeconomic policies from a corrupt, rapacious kleptocracy that has destroyed South Africa, dividing it by race, dividing it by economic strata. It is a government that governs for itself. It is not the Party of Liberation. That is a fictitious lie created by propagandists and the likes of Bell Pottinger, that sort of activity, who spread the lies that the ANC brought liberation to South Africa. If South Africans knew their own history and realized all that the ANC brought South Africa was misery, civil war, necklacing, murder of Inkatha members, and carnage and chaos, people would realize that the ANC is not the party that it was when Umkhonto we Sizwe was formed by Nelson Mandela in the early 1960s. That is not the ANC. The ANC is your typical African post-liberation corrupt kleptocracy that is like a vulture eating the carcass of the nation, except it's eating it alive. Does that make it clear for everybody? I'm just asking. Just asking. Western Cape has recorded more than 6,400 wildfires in 2 months. No wonder Paulie's hard to ever hear. He's busy putting out fires. Look at all these fires in the Western Cape. They've burnt over 103,000 hectares of land. In Cape Town, there have been more than 7,000 vegetation fires since the start of October. Wouter Kriel, spokesman for the local government, environmental affairs and development planning MEC Anton Bradel, whom we mentioned earlier, said that between December 1st and January 31st, there were 6,429 wildfires in the province. Wow. That's a lot of smoke. More than half of these have been vegetation fires. The past few months have been a true test of our fire and rescue services capabilities as well as the various support departments. While investigations continue to determine whether some of the fires we experienced were set deliberately, the response to date speaks volumes about the city's ability to handle adversity. We're not out of the woods yet, but I want to commend everyone involved in what has been one of the busiest periods from a firefighting perspective. This from a spokesperson. The City of Cape Town Safety and Security MACO member J.P. Smith. That's who said that. So what a challenge for the Western Cape. Inmates have been evacuated from Braunfley prison as a consequence of another fire. A fire at the Braunfley Correctional Facility, which led to the evacuation of inmates to neighboring correctional centers, has been contained according to Cape Winelands District Municipality. However, mop-up and monitoring activities will continue on the prison grounds until the facility is deemed safe. A wildfire had spread to the grounds on Monday. Active firefighting efforts will persist in the fire line higher up the mountain throughout the day. Justice Minister Ronnie Lamola is expected to visit the prison today. He said that the Department of Correctional Services can confirm that all inmates at Braunfley are accounted for and there are no injuries to either inmates or officials. Wow, Ronnie Lamola did something effective. Wow, although he didn't do it. He'll get the credit for it. The government does not have the money to pay 700 unemployed doctors in South Africa. Once again, when communism rules a country, this is what you get. If doctors were in the free market building their own practices, then they would be making money and they would be delivering services to patients in South Africa. But instead, since the government employs these doctors, they're sitting on the sidelines, their skills deteriorating, their services unavailable to ailing South Africans. This is what happens in a communist society. You have a misbalance, an inappropriate balance of resources not directed where it's needed. Supply and demand is what makes the market flow, not government-dictated fixed price controls and numbers of people in a sector based on race and ethnicity. The government just doesn't have any money. Health Minister Joe Pala said this is the problem, citing unemployment among medical professionals. Speaking at a press conference yesterday, he said this year the South African Medical Association, his trade union counterpart, submitted the names of 825 doctors to the health department, with the department confirming 694 as recently qualified and seeking employment. What I'm saying is that we're not in the best of situations. We would have preferred a situation where we're able to provide opportunities for everyone who wants to serve in the public service. But he highlighted financial challenges in the health sector, high cost of employment, which consumes a significant portion of provincial health budgets. This situation is exacerbated by salary increase, including a notable 7.5% salary increase. Well, if you weren't commies, they could simply go to the private sector. Why don't they go to the private sector? Why are doctors unemployed in South Africa? Because your system is corrupt and inefficient. Bottom line. Case closed. Tucker Carlson apparently went to Russia. Whoa. Mr. Carlson's been receiving blanket news coverage from state-run media in Russia since stepping foot in Moscow. He purportedly was seen leaving Vladimir Putin's office. So the speculation is that Tucker Carlson has interviewed Vladimir Putin. Will we see that on X soon? Oh, that'll be something people pay for. Tucker Carlson, the former Fox News host, now has his own show on Twitter. Has been spotted in Moscow in recent days, leading speculation in Russia and the U.S. that he is about to achieve his long-stated goal of interviewing President Vladimir Putin. Mr. Putin's spokesman Dmitry Peskov has indicated that Mr. Putin was denying requests from Western news outlets because their countries have been stupefied by anti-Russian propaganda. But Carlson has been a defender of Putin while attacking his Western critics, placing him in the vanguard of a pro-Putin wing of the American conservative movement. No, that's nonsense. See, this is propaganda from New York Times. There is no pro-conservative, pro-Russia movement. That doesn't exist. That's a fiction of imagination. And Tucker Carlson is not pro-Putin. Tucker Carlson is pro-facts. Tucker Carlson reports information factually, not the disinformation fed to us by the New York Times, by the Washington Post, who claim that people who make the argument that Volodymyr Zelensky is a corrupt thief and that the war was unnecessary. It's Joe Biden's proxy war. Making that statement, they claim makes you pro-Russian. Not pro-Russian, neither Tucker nor the American conservative movement. This is slander. This is libel because it's in print. The New York Times is a disgraceful excuse for news reporting. They call themselves the gray lady of journalism. They are the dingy gray lady of journalism. The dingy gray lady of journalism. That's what the New York Slimes is. Unbelievable. Well, in Hungary, Orban skipped a parliamentary session that was supposed to ratify the Swedish bid for NATO. Hungary's ruling Fidesz party has boycotted a session of parliament called by the opposition to ratify the NATO membership of Sweden, even as a group of Western ambassadors arrived in the building to urge the vote. Now, this is odd because Hungary over a week ago agreed to accept Sweden's bid into NATO. Now the parliament is not ratifying the bill, so something strange is going on here. For months, the Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, had repeatedly promised his counterparts that he would not be the last to sign off on Sweden's membership. But he reneged on the pledge when Turkey ratified the Swedish bid last month, leaving Hungary alone holding up Stockholm's bid. Hungarian leader publicly promised NATO Secretary General that he would urge Parliament to conclude the ratification at the first possible opportunity. But it hasn't happened. So there you go. So Sweden not joining NATO. Not the end of the world, folks. Take a deep breath. The European Union has extended a ban on Zimbabwe, an arms embargo for its 13th year, citing internal repression. Well, it's not a legitimate government. It's a repressive government in Zimbabwe, so this is the right move. The European Union has extended an arms embargo introduced in 2011 on the Zimbabwean government for another year. It said it was extending the targeted sanctions in view of the situation in Zimbabwe amid concerns the state could use arms for civilian repression. Well, they do use arms for civilian repression. They shoot demonstrators. They shoot law-abiding demonstrators who opposed the stolen election from the CCC just a couple of years ago. Broad daylight, they shot protesters. So the European Union is fully justified in denying more arms and ammunition to a corrupt, repressive regime in Harare. Yep. Now, of course, this will be turned into, our economy is collapsing because of evil, white, Western sanctions against Zimbabwe. Not true. Not true. This doesn't change anything in economics. People are stupid enough to put money into Zimbabwe where it's stolen from you by a corrupt, racist government. Feel free. Feel free. This prevents people from selling arms and ammunition to Zimbabwe, a country that doesn't need more arms. It gets its support from the Chi-Coms in China. Well, the Union Bank of Switzerland, which digested a failing Credit Suisse in a move just recently, is still recovering from that ingestion of a failing bank. They've resumed stock buybacks, and they're seeking more cost savings from the Credit Suisse takeover as they downsize the resources they took. Union Bank of Switzerland said today it would start share buybacks and find $3 billion more in cost savings from integrating Credit Suisse as the bank outlined the next phase of absorbing its fallen rival after underwhelming fourth quarter results. So let me translate that in English for you folks. The merger or purchase of Credit Suisse has caused financial distress for UBS, and their earnings outlook was less than the market expected. But they're trying to turn this into a positive story. A little bit good spin on this one. Swiss Bank now expects $13 billion in cost savings by the end of 2026, with half of it come from slashing headcount. Aha, unemployment. UBS Chief Financial Officer Todd Tuckner said UBS had previously set a goal of more than $10 billion, but now they want to cut $13 billion. As a result, the market wasn't hoodwinked by this, and the UBS shares were down 2.5% by 11 o'clock Greenwich Mean Time. While the market was up 0.8%, they were down 2.5%. Well, Britain's HMS Queen Elizabeth is more of an embarrassment than we realized. High-profile failure of a $3.7 billion aircraft carrier shows how Britain is struggling to keep up with first-rate militaries because it's a second-rate military. The British forces have fallen on hard times from a lack of investment and because of neglect. Years of underfunding left the UK's Navy in the threadbare state. Its aircraft carriers keep breaking down, with one pulling out a NATO exercise. It comes as the UK is stretching its naval capabilities to counter global threats. The $3.7 billion HMS Queen Elizabeth had to pull out of the latest NATO exercise because its rotor would not work, its propeller. Yeah, that's not good. UK Navy, once the world's most powerful navy, now just an embarrassment. England's King Charles has been diagnosed with cancer. Puts a spotlight on his son. The Prince of Wales to act as the face of the monarchy in public events while his father undergoes treatment for unspecified cancer. I read somewhere he had colon cancer. I don't know what he has. Prince William, the youngest and most high-profile member of the working royals, is now tasked with being the public face of the British monarchy after his father, King Charles III's cancer diagnosis. Polls show that Prince of Wales, who's 41, is the king's immediate heir and already the most popular member of the royal family. Over the years, the prince has built up a reputation of being a steady pair of hands who rarely causes controversy and is an adept practitioner of the House of Windsor's well-tested formula of polite neutrality. The 75-year-old king's diagnosis came less than a year after he was crowned, 17 months after his mother died, making Charles the oldest British monarch to accede to the throne after a record 7 decades in waiting as heir. He has proved surprisingly popular as monarch, developing himself into a grandfather of the nation figure while quietly pushing issues he cares about, such as the environment. So, King Charles, cancer diagnosis. Wish him well. NASA's Ingenuity, its Ingenuity helicopter is broken, and the Perseverance rover has spotted it. NASA's Perseverance rover took a photo of its broken companion, the Ingenuity helicopter, as it sat alone on a dune. In the most recent photo of Ingenuity, the dual-rotor copter can be seen motionless on a sandy dune in the background as the barren, rocky Mars landscape fills the foreground. So here you go. There's a picture. There's the rover, and there is the helicopter broken on a sand dune. Shame. Shame, shame. You can see the rotor there, the shadow, how the tip was broken. Couldn't they make those things out of plastic that they broke so easily? You can see the dirt where obviously it struck as it landed in a poor landing executed by the NASA team. Well, the Senate is facing a major blowback from its ridiculous America Surrender bill. Yeah, this is a border bill, so-called immigration reform. This is immigration surrender. This must be stopped by Mitch McConnell and his crazy band of rhinos and Democratic fellow travelers. The walls are closing in from both sides of the aisle on the Senate border security bill as liberals and conservatives say they can't stomach the policy changes. Party leaders pleaded with lawmakers Monday to give the bipartisan deal a chance. They said it's a once-in-a-generation opportunity to fix years of problems at the southern border. As part of a $118 billion national security spending bill, it also includes aid for Ukraine and Israel. It is not a once-in-a-generation. It is a disgusting, vile surrender of American sovereignty. This idiotic bill gives the president the ability to suspend the border closures 1/3 of the year, the first year it's in effect, for 50% the second year, and then for 75% the third year. So basically, the bill prevents the government from closing the border in any crisis when our national security is threatened. And the president can suspend any closing of the border at any point during the time that it's closed because it's been ordered. This is a disgrace. It allows thousands of criminal aliens to flood into America. It doesn't even take effect until a certain threshold of criminal alien invaders have been apprehended, thousands of them, and then processed and allowed to come in the country. It allows a violation of our sovereignty, a violation of public law by allowing criminal alien invaders to come into the country in certain numbers that are approved of, not to mention the ones that elude the government's apprehension. This is a disgrace, an absolute disgrace. This bill must be defeated. And every single person who's behind this bill, who sponsors it, whether a Republican or Democrat, must be primaried and voted out of office, either in a primary or in the general election. This is an absolute disgrace to this nation. This is what happens when politicians go to Washington for personal gain, for self-aggrandizement, not for the nation, not for Americans. And don't even try this nonsense you leftists hate wankers about, oh, it's xenophobic, oh, you hate immigrants. We don't. That's nonsense. This country lives off of people who come here and contribute to our society. These are not people coming here to contribute to our society. These people have no business being here. These are people, I don't want to hear about their asylum claims because they're not asylum seekers. They have violated every tenet of international norms to become an asylum seeker by invading our country and crossing multiple countries to get to our border and slip across and then evade apprehension and settle in our country and send all of the money back to where they came from, draining, bleeding our economy. This is not tolerable. This is not acceptable. Legitimate immigrants, legitimate migrants show up at a border post, present their identification, enter your country legally, and stay for the period they're authorized to stay, whether it's a year, 3 months, or a permanent green card status or a 10-year visa. Not people who slip across the border, burn or ditch their identification, then claim that they're Juan Valdez from Colombia and they're coffee growers and they came here for political asylum. That is garbage. That is nonsense. That is unacceptable. And go ahead, throw your bigotry and your racism and your xenophobic comments out there because it's not true. People deserve to be sovereign. We create body politic, the polity does. We create governments to represent our common interest, not to undermine our internal security, our social fabric, and our nation. This is a disgrace to this country. This is the worst bill we've seen since Joe Biden's infrastructure bill. A crescendo of conservative senators and some key liberal lawmakers announced they would oppose the bill in the first test vote because of the border security provisions. Wow. At least 20 Republicans are already on record as opposed to the bill. Others are expected to follow. Mr. McConnell, lead negotiator James Lankford of Oklahoma are an island of their own as no other Republicans appear to be willing to give it their blessing. Seeing the writing on the wall ahead of procedural vote, Mr. McConnell reportedly told colleagues during closed-door meeting Monday evening to vote against advancing legislation. There's a lot of folks that are looking at Facebook and Twitter for their fact base. How do we move from doing press conferences about border problems to actually solving some of these border problems? The fury was just as palpable among liberals and immigrant groups that whacked the proposal as a disgrace, heartlessness, and racism. We need real humane immigration solutions that are centered on dignity and justice, not exclusionary enforcement-only policy, says Pramila Jayapal, Washington Democrat and chair. No, what we need is enforcement of existing law. We need the government to do its damn job. We have a more than generous immigration system that allows 700,000 to 900,000 foreign nationals to take an oath each and every year to swear to uphold the Constitution and become Americans. That is more than double the entire total of the rest of the entire frickin' planet combined. This is nonsense. There's nothing wrong with the immigration system. What is wrong is the enforcement of immigration systems. You can take your stuff, Jalalapal, there in Washington and shove it where the sun don't shine. You can take that nonsense, Mitch McConnell, and shove it where the sun don't shine. This is not about immigration reform. This is about American surrender. We will not surrender our sovereignty. You bums will be voted out of office. Unbelievable. Chucky Schumer from New York wants quick action. No. Well, Joe Biden's losing support from progressives, the lunatic on the far fringe left, the small minority of Americans, but the squawky, whiny, loud sector that have the backing of universities, schools, the corporate arena, and of course, the legacy media. They're leaving Joe Biden's standard because of his border bill and Israel. The Jew-hating far left doesn't like Joe Biden. 4 years ago, when Biden clinched the Democratic nomination, he aggressively courted progressives, forming an alliance that helped destroy America and put him in the White House. Now, deep cracks between him and the lunatic left are emerging, and they threaten his chances of re-election. The president's handling of the war in Gaza has strained his relationship with progressives over the last 3 months. His push for a bipartisan plan that would severely restrict migration at the southern border has further jeopardized his standing with the constituency, which includes young voters and minority voters. Yep. Well, and here's the latest violation of the First Amendment, folks. We talk about this repeatedly on this channel. This is a clear violation of the First Amendment. And for those in the audience unfamiliar with the American Constitution, the first 10 amendments are known collectively as the Bill of Rights. And these were ratified in 1791 after the Constitution went into effect in 1789. So the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, which means no state religion like the Anglican Church, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, which means that people can exercise their faith freely without restrictions, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. Abridging the freedom of speech. Congress shall make no law. Congress has no right to restrict our speech, and that includes purchasing books that they don't like. Amazon cajoled, pressured, threatened, harangued by corrupt Biden regime officials for over a week to stop Amazon from allowing citizens to purchase books that the corrupt Biden regime does not like. This is a clear violation of the First Amendment. There should be federal charges right now. I think states should prefer charges. I think they should. Any state that has in their constitution, like Pennsylvania, in its Article 1 of its constitution, any provision that prevents the government from doing this ought to file a lawsuit against the federal government for its crimes. Now, the jurisdiction will be questionable, but do it anyway. The Biden regime has pressured Amazon to censor books that question Rona jabs. Senior Biden idiots summoned Amazon officials to the White House during the height of the pandemic to discuss propaganda and misinformation in books for sale on the retail giant's website that questioned the safety and efficacy of Rona jabs. White House officials spent a week berating Amazon in March of 2021 over books related to vaccine misinfo and asked what steps companies' officials would take to reduce the visibility of these titles. Wow. Amazon emails were released by House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jim Jordan. The Amazon pressure campaign overseen by Andy Slavitt, who was Mr. Biden's senior advisor on the COVID-19 task force, appears to have been successful. On March 9th, the same day Amazon officials agreed to meet with the Biden administration, aides at the White House said they do not promote policy for anti-jab books whose primary purpose is to persuade readers vaccines are unsafe or ineffective. Unbelievable. White House officials flagged one book authored in 2019 by Dr. Vernon Coleman titled "Anyone Who Tells You Jabs Are Safe and Effective Is Lying." The title was discovered in Amazon search by White House officials, including Mr. Slavitt, who immediately wrote to a top Amazon executive. If you search for jabs under books, I see what comes up. I haven't looked beyond that, but if that's what's on the surface, it's concerning. It is concerning that criminals in the Biden regime are searching Amazon to find books to ban from the public. When this is a clear violation of the Constitution, this is forcing third parties to act as agents of the government. This is a violation of the law. This person, Mr. Slavitt, should have federal charges against him. But of course, the corrupt Department of Injustice under the Biden regime will not prosecute this criminal. Yep. This is criminal action. Criminal action. Well, America wanted a homegrown solar industry. Yeah, but China's building most of it. Yeah, that's right. As I said, this is the problem with solar. China's biggest solar companies are expanding in the U.S., where they will reap generous government bailouts and aids. For years, U.S. erected higher and higher barriers to the import of Chinese solar panels, arguing that was the best way to protect domestic suppliers. But now China's solar giants are building their factories inside the U.S. In the past year, the world's biggest solar companies, all of which do the bulk of their manufacturing in China, have quietly launched plans to set up or expand panel factories in Ohio and Texas. China-based companies are behind nearly a quarter of the roughly 80 gigawatts of new solar panel capacity that has been announced since legislation in 2022. Well, there you go. So the Chi-Coms once again profiting from government programs which prop up industries to make them illegitimately pseudo-profitable. That's by taking money from us and giving to these solar companies. Well, Biden tells a crowd about 2021 meeting he had with the French president, except that president died in 1996. Jackass Joe told a crowd at a campaign fundraiser about a 2021 meeting he had with French President Francois Mitterrand. Of course, Mitterrand died in 1996. The remarks came at a campaign fundraiser in Las Vegas. Wow. During his remarks, Mr. Biden was explaining to the crowd how world leaders viewed former President Trump, saying they were concerned that he would return to power. He recounted a story he's told many times about a meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron during a June 2021 meeting with leaders of the world's 7 largest economies in the UK. Except Mr. Biden confused Mr. Mitterrand with Mr. Macron. I sat down and I said, America's back. And Mitterrand from France, looked at me and said, well, how long are you back for? Mitterrand, who was France's president from 81 to 95, died in 96. It was the second major idiotic gaffe by Biden in the past 2 weeks. Last month, he looked into the audience at an event in North Carolina searching for Representative Deborah Ross, saying he just posed for a picture with her before realizing lawmaker was back in Washington and he'd taken a photo with someone else. Where's Deborah? Just had my picture taken with her. That's probably why she left. Oh, she couldn't be here, actually. That's not true. I got her mixed up. What an incredible moron this guy is. And this is the president of the United States. Well, the migrants who purportedly beat up law enforcement officers in Times Square in broad daylight purportedly now have been arrested in Phoenix by immigration agents. That means, of course, they'll be released without bail. Several migrants were nabbed in Arizona by federal authorities who are investigating if they're members of the same group who fled New York following the arrest in the caught-on-camera breakdown of 2 New York cops. The migrants, these are criminal alien invaders, stop calling them that, picked up by immigration and customs enforcement agents at a Greyhound bus station in Phoenix, according to law enforcement sources. ICE agents are working to determine if the migrants are any of the 4 men suspected to have hopped on a bus bound for California last Wednesday after they're free without bail. So this is the country we live in. Jackass Joe's administration cannot shoot down or stop a Chinese spy balloon which floats over all our nuclear missile sites in the Dakotas and the upper Midwest, all the way across the country. Once it's gained all of its intelligence and sent it back to Chi-Coms in Beijing, then the administration shoots the balloon down. Then we have these criminal alien invaders who assault police, and then the criminal alien facilitator, Alvin Bragg, the fraud who is prosecuting Donald Trump over bogus charges. That Alvin Bragg made himself famous with his little perp walk for Donald Trump, a disgraceful action by an anti-American, hateful shrew of Alvin Bragg. This is the moron who released these people without bail after assaulting police officers in broad daylight, allowing them back on the street, and of course they fled the jurisdiction. They traveled all the way across the country from New York, going almost 3,000 miles all the way to Arizona before immigration officials caught them on a Greyhound bus. Can you believe how insecure and unsafe this country has become? Unbelievable, folks. A former Trump official shot in the head at 5:45 in the evening on K Street, an upscale part of D.C., just 2 blocks from the White House, shot in the head by a racial hater who hits him in the head with a gun, shoots him there. and then steals his car. The man died a week later. He also shot and killed another man, but he's Hispanic, so the press didn't cover that. They only covered the rich white guy who died, not the Hispanic. This is the state of things in America. It is a country in collapse. It is a country in free fall. Why? Because corrupt prosecutors, because corrupt politicians from Harrisburg to D.C., to Albany, to Tallahassee, to Annapolis. These are the people running this country into the ground. These people have no respect, no regard for life. They have no morality. These are people like the legislature in New York who openly wept tears of joy when that idiotic state passed a piece of legislation which allows mothers to murder their children after they've been born. That's right. Once a child's been born, the mother can say, well, you can abort it now. That is a crime. That is murder. I don't know of any cases where it's occurred, but they allow that, and they openly wept. That's so proud. A woman's right to murder a child. Yep, that's what they were happy about. Sick, twisted people in a country which has lost its moral mooring. It is frightening to say the very least. Here's shocking news, folks. I didn't know this, couldn't see this coming, but country singer Toby Keith has died at the age of 62 after a battle with stomach cancer. I didn't even know he had stomach cancer. Toby Keith, a sometimes polarizing figure in country music, a craft and identity around his macho, pro-American swagger, has died. The Beer for My Horses singer-songwriter who was battling stomach cancer died peacefully Monday, surrounded by his family, according to a statement posted on this website. He fought his fight with grace and courage. He was diagnosed in 2022. The 6'4" singer broke out in the country boom years of the 1990s, writing songs that fans love to hear. Over his career, he publicly clashed with other celebrities and journalists and often pushed back against record executives who wanted to smooth his rough edges. He was known for his overt patriotism on post-9/11 songs like Courtesy of the Red, White, and Blue, and the boisterous barroom tunes like I Love This Bar and Red Solo Cup. He had a powerful, booming voice, a tongue-in-cheek sense of humor, and a range that carried love songs as well as drinking songs. Among his 20 number one Billboard hits were How Do You Like Me Now?, Should Have Been a Cowboy, As Good As I Once Was, My List, and My Beer for My Horses. He worked as a roughneck in the oil fields of Oklahoma as a young man, then played semi-pro football before launching his career as a singer. Keith said, I write about life and I sing about life and I don't overanalyze things. I'm just talking about tonight. Wow. The money to be made was unbelievable, Keith told the Associated Press in 96. I came out of high school in 1980. They gave me this job in December 1979, $50,000 a year in the oil fields. I was 18. But that domestic oil field industry collapsed and he had not saved. So he was broke and he went on to play defensive end for the Oklahoma City Drillers, a farm team of the now defunct United States Football League, and then eventually became a singer. Wow. His breakout hit, Should Have Been a Cowboy, played 3 million times on radio stations, making the most played country song in the 1990s. Toby Keith, dead at the age of 62. Bit of a surprise, folks. Didn't know that was coming. I didn't even know he was ill. And there you have it. There are the news stories for today, the 6th of February, 2024. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. I hope that you found it interesting and something useful here from the news today. How's everybody doing? Let's see what's in the chat here. We'll catch up with that. Be sure to hit that like button, folks. Small audience here at this unusual time and not many likes. So let's see if we can get some more likes. Right. Okay. We're catching back up here. Go back up. All right. So, enjoyed foundry metallurgy. Okay. How would South Africa deal with criminals, Zuma, Ramaphosa, Malema, seeing that there is no court of justice that they answer to? There is no way they deal with them. Look, Jacob Zuma is guilty of corruption in the arms deal. Judge Hillary Squires said as much when he convicted Sheikh Shabir and sent him to prison. He said that Jacob Zuma has committed crimes. The evidence is in front of me, but he's not a defendant here, so I can't convict him. And that has never been taken back to court in an effective fashion. So he's never going to be held accountable. Julius Malema will never be held accountable, firing live ammunition into crowds, calling for the genocide of white South Africans, the murder of farmers. He'll never be held to account. The VBS scandal, stealing money from a bank for the Venda, robbing elderly go-go's, elderly grandmas, never be held to account. Inciting violence at Senegal, calling for the burning of Boer farmers and Boers, which led to the horrific burning of one South African white farmer and the loss of over 90,000 hectares of prime farmland and tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of wildlife and domestic animals. Yeah, no, he'll never be held to account. Cyril Ramaphosa will never be held to account. These people will never, it doesn't matter what government comes in, they'll take the same approach that Donald Trump foolishly took in just letting bygones be bygones instead of prosecuting the criminals. Donald Trump's one of his biggest mistakes was not pursuing the Justice Department, pursuing Hillary Clinton for her crimes. That's a shame, because it didn't prevent the Biden regime from fabricating crimes against Trump and colluding with states to prosecute him illegally. So yeah, nothing lesson learned there. Well, they can't restrict the Putin interview. It'll be on Elon Musk Twitter. Saboteurs, all the men could create mayhem. I've got a feeling that we will be paying in more ways than. Yep, been working my. Okay, got that right. It's a silent maneuver to be put in place when needed. How many international monitors watch the next vote in South Africa? Probably not many, Jan. And it won't matter anyway. The IEC will get it wrong. Here I'll say it again. If the ANC wins by some criminal means, we should vote with our money. I think people will. But the problem is, where do you go? You going to go to America? If the Democrats pilfer the events of 2024, what are you going to do? I think things like the Zondo Commission, yep. I like your Stormers hoodie, says Erica. Yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Yep. Wondering where all those doctors from Cuba brought in during the health care a couple years ago disappeared too. Well, they came in, they were given money at a time when South Africa didn't have any money, and they were getting money from the African Development Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank, as well as the BRICS Bank. And that money went in the pockets of ANC. And where was it spent? Can anyone account for the $4.3 billion given to South Africa in 2020 when the Rona pandemic began? Can anybody account for that? The ANC hasn't been asked to account for it. They haven't been forced to account for it. No one knows where that money went. Yep, good question, Erica. The terrorist agency will import more unwanted, okay. You miss old Smithy now, no cheap food or jobs. Yeah. Yes, Ian Smith was sold out by South Africa. That's correct. That's right. Forster sold out Rhodesia. Ben, I'm not seeing this story anywhere. This is the third day in a row. People are saying that 17 Army bases for sale in South Africa. What media outlet is reporting this? I can't find the story on any of the legacy media sites in South Africa. I have not seen that. Cancer is hectic. Yep. Yep. Ben says, also in the Foundry Metallurgy Industry. Okay. Royal Ho Ho Ho, says Daniel Prinsloo. Genuine immigrants adjust their host countries best they can. Ask me. I was an immigrant and I couldn't even speak the languages here. I had to learn to adapt. That's correct, Erica. Correct, Erica. You came from the Congo. Never forget what my UPA answered my one question. They believe the stories. That's when I realized that all the media is bought. I can't even trust the history we're told and taught. Yep, that's true. Hey, there's Garrett. All right, welcome, Garrett. And Val Cooper's here too. Thanks for the news, says Val. You're welcome, Val. And we got a few more likes out of that. Thanks for the few that came up. I don't know about you guys. Hope you're not having any trouble with the broadcast, but I keep having trouble with my studio. It's a Firefox issue or it's YouTube. It tends to happen when I play music, which is allowed, but I share the revenue with the creator, like Giselle. But it's also happening now just when I'm talking, and that shouldn't be happening. It shouldn't affect the broadcast, but whenever I see this in my browser, it makes me a little bit nervous that you're still getting the feed that you're supposed to be getting. It's Schmaltz and Bickenbach, run by a real... What the heck are you talking about? Will Hunter ever be held liable? No, Kevin. Hunter Biden will escape prison or he'll be pardoned by his corrupt father before he's thrown out of office in January of next year. Yep. Okay, Garrett. Yes, I hear you. The minister herself said it, but where is it reported in the media? Can somebody find the story and send me a link in one of the groups? And I'll happy to cover it. I mean, I don't cover stories just because somebody said it happened. Unless I was present and I heard it, then I can report firsthand. But I can't cover a story which I have no information on. So I have to have a media report or a statement that's once again, it's skipping over here, or a statement from somebody. So that's what I need. Oh, that story is from the year 2000. You see why yes, that's no use. That's 24 years ago. Yep. 24 years ago. That's why, folks, why I don't run stories like that. You have to be very careful, particularly when breaking news and people put things out there. A lot of people get hoodwinked by things on Twitter and other social media sites. People put videos up or images saying it's this, that, and the other, and people don't know better and they fall for it. I try to be as circumspect as possible with the news that I report, with the stories I cover. And if I don't have reliable sources, I might mention a story, but I'm not going to report it as such. And this is one here. So if Christine is correct, then that story is 24 years old, selling 17 military bases, and is not germane to today, unless they haven't sold them. Yeah. Hey, Teresa, good morning. Way late. What's way? Oh, you're way late, Teresa. That's fine. It's okay to pop in here. This is an early broadcast. I have other events going on which fill up my business hours this week, so I cannot be here. So I just want to let you know that I'm here. So we're doing the news earlier this week. Tomorrow, I'm not sure about doing Wednesdays with the Colonel. I may have to beg off with Ronaldo. But yeah. And again, it's skipping over here. Come on, YouTube. What is your freaking problem? Okay. And John thinks Giselle is hot. Okay, I'll be sure to tell her that next time I talk to her. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Anyway, folks, crazy, crazy world, isn't it? It's a world we're living in, and it is a crazy world. So this border bill is absolutely ridiculous. Let me see if I can find some news and see if it breaks down. I listened to Mark Levin last night when I was on the road. And boy, he had some bad things to say about this border bill. I knew some of it already, but he really went into depth. There's hundreds of pages of this border bill. Yep. Unbelievable. So, top stories. What does Speaker Johnson hate about the bill, according to the Washington Post? The Senate border bill wasn't remotely worth the wait, says the New York Post. Let's take a look at that story, folks, and what the New York Post has to say about it. All right. Well, that wasn't worth the wait. We're talking, of course, of the months in the making Senate compromise on border migrants asylum policy that was supposed to include major Democratic concessions as the price of okaying aid for Ukraine and Israel. Instead, the plan is basically to cover for President Biden, retroactively authorizing many of the policies he invented to speed the influx, while also giving an excuse for why he hasn't done squat to stem the tide. The central problem, it doesn't force Biden to close the border to asylum seekers unless they are crossing by more than 5,000 a day. It only allows them to invoke the supposedly new authority at 4,000 per day. So in other words, the government will allow at least 4,000 a day to slide in before they even try to take action. And even then, it forces the border to remain open for 270 days in the first year and less in the following years. Plainly an effort to handcuff the next president should Biden lose this fall. It supposedly ends catch and release, the practice where Border Patrol agents apprehend criminal alien invaders and then wave them along. But that's already contrary to the law. So why would a fresh ban change anything? Because they're not following the law now. Has the federal government ever magically met a congressional demand to work faster? No, it hasn't. This is nonsense. Oh, and it automatically grants work permits to every asylum seeker. It does let in, making illegal immigration even more attractive. So they're going to encourage criminals to come to this country by giving them permits to work, even though they're not authorized to be here. Wow. Unbelievable. The Republican negotiators got taken for a ride here. Kudos to Senator Chuck Schumer for that success, but it only guarantees the plan is what Speaker Mike Johnson already declared dead on arrival in the House, even if it makes that a Senate. This is a disgrace. So Don Adams, in comments, said closing the border supposedly if 5,000 cross the border amounts to $1.825 million a year given a free pass like they are now, contrary to the law which Biden ignores. The only thing the bill does is codify the passage of such individuals. Yep, the 1.8 million is more people than in many states' populations, larger than all but 4 American cities. Such massive people cannot be absorbed in American society. Those opposed to the bill are correct to do so. Wow. Hammer NMC, or NYC, said the acceptable threshold of illegal immigrants crossing is 0. Mexico is the country of asylum, not the USA. Thank you very much. That's what I've said. They're not from Mexico, then they got to Mexico, that's where they seek asylum. Immigrants are welcome if they legally apply, and that is what I would like to have seen. Biden needs to secure the border until Congress can pass something realistic. Biden needs to be removed, impeached, for his failure to uphold his oath to the Constitution. Speaker of the House needs to work on a procedure which would do away with omnibus bills and require that all laws passed have a sunset clause, which would require that they be reviewed and voted on periodically. That's not going to happen. That is a good idea, but it's not going to happen. So let's see what the Washington Post has to say about this. Catherine Rampell in an op-ed piece saying why the GOP caught the car again. Okay, obviously a Republican-hating piece. Welp, the dog caught the car again. After months, decades of running and tightening the border, House Republicans are suddenly paralyzed when offered the chance to do so. See, these are deep state supporting actors from the corrupt media. The Washington Compost is nothing but a corrupt media outlet. And this op-ed piece, now this is at least is marked as op-ed. Kudos to the Washington Post for actually putting their opinion on the opinion page and not pushing it as news. I'll give them credit for that. The hard-won Bipartisan Senate deal dropped Sunday evening with tons of items to conserve his border bucket list, including many that former President Trump had begged for. These include beefing up border security as a condition for giving any more aid to Ukraine. That's not true. It weakens border security. A tougher and faster asylum processing system so that those who don't meet asylum cannot stay and work for years while their cases crawl through the cracks. That's a lie. It gives work permits to criminal alien invaders. This is just made up. Hiring more professionals for customs border protection as well as immigration and customs enforcement, 1,500, 1,200. Okay, that one. Huge investments in fentanyl detection technologies. Okay. Reviving something like Title 42 restrictions wherein the president can shut down most of the asylum system. This version doesn't require a public health pretext and has more severe consequences for border crossers. He already has the ability to do that. He doesn't need a new piece of legislation. House Republicans should have been pinching themselves in disbelief, yet within hours of the 370-page bill dropping, House leaders in the GOP ruled out letting their chamber vote on any of it. Yeah. I've seen enough, Mike Johnson said, and later adding, it was a waste of time. He just can't take yes for an answer, it seems. Well, this is a communist sympathizer here, a America destroyer here, this lady, Catherine Rampell. Wow. Here's a link to Catherine Rampell's opinions. I don't think I need to see any more. These are different. There are different ways to interpret why this much-awaited, much-desired legislation ended up in Johnson's words, dead on arrival in the House. Perhaps his conference wants to maintain border chaos as a live issue for the 2024 election. No, let's stop right there. There was no border chaos in January of 2021. Border chaos started days later because Biden encouraged criminal alien invaders to violate asylum laws, to come to this country, to invade this country, to flood districts based on population, not on citizens, to change the representation in New York, in Illinois, in California, crowding out Republicans and ensuring that demon rats win the races. Yeah, this is not about what this clown is saying, not even remotely about that. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Maybe GOP lawmakers genuinely think they can hold out for the more draconian bill they put forward last year, known as H.R. 2. H.R. 2 is an effective bill. H.R. 2 did what it's supposed to. The problem is this. Biden doesn't need laws. He has laws. He has executive action. Biden doesn't need any immigration reform. Democrats don't need immigration reform. They want immigration dilution. They want us to weaken our efforts to control our borders and surrender our sovereignty to criminals who will invade our country. Kowtow to people. The world's mightiest nation with the most powerful military, with nuclear weapons at its disposal, with special forces at its disposal, with the ability to strike its opponents anywhere on the globe at any moment, any day of the week, of the year. This country, we are supposed to bend over and take it up the backside from criminals who flood our country, pour across our border with the consent of a corrupt regime in Washington, D.C. No. I'm sorry, Miss Rampell. Your opinions are worth about as much as the rubbish left after a Starbucks Frappuccino. Belongs in a landfill. Wow. Unbelievable. Wow. The Washington Post, they just sit around and make this garbage up. Senate Republicans cast serious doubt on the fate of a bipartisan immigration deal. They keep calling it bipartisan. Getting one Republican doesn't make it bipartisan. It makes it annoying. Bipartisan plan to address, there's the turncoat American-hating rhino, James Lankford, Republican of Oklahoma. Bipartisan plan to address U.S. asylum and border control policies faces major skepticism as 24 Senate Republicans cast serious doubt on legislation's chances. Senator James Lankford, a turncoat, one of the negotiators who wrote this piece of slime bill, told reporters in the Capitol he does not think a planned Wednesday vote on a motion can be approved. We're trying to figure out what to do next. People are saying, hey, we need a lot more time to go through this. Well, 370 pages, of course, you moron. And Senator Roger Wicker, Republican of Mississippi, said, I think the proposal is dead. The newly released $118 billion national security bill includes roughly $20 billion for border provisions, including $650 million for the border wall and funding for asylum judges, expanded detention capabilities, and programs. What it doesn't tell you is how much of that $118 billion is going to Volodymyr Zelensky. Yeah, where's that at? Nowhere in the story does it talk about how much goes to Volodymyr Zelensky. I've found a couple news reports to say that over $60 billion of the $118 billion abomination is for Volodymyr Zelensky. Not a single one of these stories. Here's another one. This one's from NBC News. Senate Republicans threatened to block border security bill that they negotiated. No, see, that's a lie. Senate Republicans did negotiate this bill. A couple of turncoat Republicans in name only are the ones who negotiated this abomination to allow America to be flooded. And why do they do this? What corporations are giving money to these corrupt members of Congress so that they will violate our sovereignty? Who? It's time to start taking an in-depth look at these people who are violating our nation's constitution. Yep, absolutely. Look at clueless Mitch McConnell there, who can't even form a sentence. It's as bad as Joe Biden. In a striking turn of events, Senate Republicans threatened money to block a major bipartisan package of border security measures and asylum restrictions just one day after the chief negotiator signed off on it. Well, he's not the chief negotiator. He's part of the cabal that's misleading people. Yep. Senate Minority Whip John Thune of South Dakota told reporters that Republicans worry there hasn't been adequate time to process the bill. The 370-page bill finalized and released on Sunday was crafted with the input of Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. Of course it was. Yep. But do you see anything here? We got a deal. We got a deal. There is nothing in this story talking about how much of that money goes to Ukraine, which purportedly is over $60 billion. Why are we signing a border bill to protect our border by giving billions more to a corrupt regime in Kiev? Why? Why is that happening? Because that's illegitimate, folks. That is frankly illegitimate and should never be happening. Unbelievable what's happening in this country, what they get away with here. It takes the cake. Unbelievable. Wow. So there's the stories right there on the border. Let's see if we've got any more stories we can cover about this. Nope, I'm looking. I don't see any more stories on it. Wow. Chinese brokers restrict cross-border swaps. That's a different border. That's a different border. Well, Republican governors are backing Texas at the border, keeping pressure on the corrupt Biden regime over immigrant crossing. They're criminals. As more than a dozen Republican governors gathered on Sunday at the Texas border, Kyle Willis was across the river in Mexico considering his next move to enter the U.S. The 23-year-old Jamaican who said he left his country after facing attacks and discrimination due to his sexuality had followed the path of a historic number of migrants over the past 2 years and tried to cross the Rio Grande at the border city of Eagle Pass. But he waded back across the river after spending hours in soaking clothes, failing to persuade Texas National Guard soldiers behind razor wire to let him through. It's not just something they're saying to deter persons from coming in. It's actually real. Who for now is staying in a shelter in Piedras Negras. His experience could be considered a victory for Greg Abbott, who returned to Eagle Pass on Sunday surrounded by GOP governors. Well, why is Kyle Willis invading America? He's in Mexico. What's wrong with staying in Mexico? I presume he's gay, and that's what the story is here because they're not telling us. So is there something wrong with being gay in Mexico? Why don't you just stay there, buddy? You found a safe haven in Mexico. That's how asylum works. You don't shop for destinations, so get out. Yep, get out. America says immigrants in South Africa claiming child support. Well, they get it in Germany. They get it in Germany, and then they send the money back to Syria and to Afghanistan and to Nigeria and all these other places, draining the German economy right from the taxpayer's pocket into the criminal alien invaders' pocket and out and around the world, facilitating yet more criminal alien invaders to flood into the country. It is asinine. Germany gives Kindergeld, that's child money, a ridiculous amount of money given to people to have children, and they don't make a determination whether you're German or not. They just give it to people who live there. It's unbelievable. Yep. No idea what Garrett is talking about there. No idea what he's talking about. Anyway, yeah, so that's what's going on with the border bill. It's a utter disgrace. It's a violation of our sovereignty. It should not be tolerated, and it needs to be abandoned. Yep. The Catholic Church is anti-gay. No, not the Argentine Pope. He is pro-gay. He's given authorization to sanction same-sex unions, which is a violation of church doctrine for the Catholic Church. And there's pushback from many Catholics around the world who are not buying into his nonsense. So that's not an assault on gay couples. That's an assault on... See, look, we got to codify something here very quickly, folks. There's two things. There's marriage, which is a religious institution. Marriage is a religious institution. That's correct. So churches have formed the institution of marriage to consecrate the union of a man and a woman. That's what a marriage is, okay? There's no question about that. Civil unions is something completely different. Civil unions was in effect for all of recorded history. A civil union was a marriage sanctioned and approved by the state. And with that typically comes benefits, the rights to rear, to breed, reproduce, and rear children and have parental rights over them, the right to have tax advantages in many societies, the right to inheritance of the other partner without being taxed, and all sorts of benefits that come with that. So a civil union is recognized by the state. If you're Catholic and you get married by justice of the peace, you are not married in the eyes of the Catholic Church. You must be married in a Catholic church. Otherwise, it's not real. And therein is the distinction between a marriage and a civil union. If, for instance, you are married in a church, most countries don't recognize that unless you also get your marriage license from the state. Oftentimes, you have to go through another ceremony, but not always, in order to sanction. You have to have a license to say you're married. The state has taken over that responsibility to claim. But the reality is that's not a marriage. That's a civil union recognized under civil law. Marriage is a religious institution, and the Catholic Church has banned same-sex unions. However, this Argentine Pope is undermining the church, undermining the faith by approving same-sex unions in violation of church doctrine. That's the bottom line here, folks. There is no other way to review this. Now, that is not anti-gay. That is not pro-gay. That is simply factually the information. And people just can't digest that because their emotions get wrapped up around them. I know gays who have no problem with that analysis because they know that to be the factual truth. And most people who are gay are looking simply for recognition and a civil union. Those who demand a marriage by a church are pretty cheeky when a church has a doctrine against such unions. Anyway, that's the situation there. Talking about German, Swiss, and Austrian companies, and okay, I didn't see that in chat, so I don't know what's going on. Okay. Not seeing too many invaders here at home, but the ones that we're seeing are black people and Asian, and find that unusual. It's not unusual, John, because Jackass Joe's administration has facilitated the criminal alien invasion of America by people from all over the world, none of whom border the U.S. Virtually only a handful of the people invading our country are actually coming from Mexico. Only a handful of them. And they don't even have legitimate bases. Mexico is not a country that is being politically repressive. They're not dropping homosexuals off the roof in Mexico. They are not imprisoning people illegitimately for their political beliefs in Mexico. So it's a safe place. Yes, I know there's a lot of crime in Mexico. There's a lot of crime in D.C., a lot of crime in Chicago and New York where they beat police officers in broad daylight. But that's not a justification for coming here. Hondurans have been coming here in the thousands, hundreds of thousands of Hondurans, virtually depopulating Honduras and allowed to slide into this country. And their argument is it's unsafe in Honduras. And they're correct. It's the murder capital of the world, Honduras. But that doesn't justify coming to America. They have neighboring states that are safe to go to. They don't need to come here. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Oh, Garrett, it's not unusual to be loved by someone. Mm-hmm. Tom Jones. Tom Jones. Yep. Anyway, yeah, so that's the bottom line with that. But that's just the situation that we're living in the world, and nobody wants to address what's really happening. It's pretty sad out there, folks. It's pretty darn sad. Pretty darn sad. But hey, such is life. Such is life. Yep. Ah, boy. I'll tell you. It's crazy. Not safe in South Africa, says Erica. Well, it's not safe in a lot of places. Apparently on K Street in D.C., a couple blocks from White House, it's not safe. It's not safe to be a police officer in uniform and armed on the streets of New York City in Manhattan at Times Square. You'll be beaten. And the corrupt prosecutor, Alvin Bragg, will allow the criminals to walk right back out in the street and they'll flee for California. Yeah, so there you go. John's in Mexico a lot. No, I've only gone to Mexico a handful of times. I find it unappealing. Patrick's here says, perhaps in Becky's quiet diplomacy was louder than there wouldn't be many illegals in South Africa today. I don't know if that would have changed it. The problem is okay, so for a lot of people who don't know this, historically, South Africa's National Defense Force and the SADF, before that, patrolled the border, particularly with Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and Eswatini. They would always have at least 7 infantry companies. We're talking over 2,000 soldiers actively patrolling the border 24 hours a day. But the ineptitude, the collapse, the underfunding, the disastrous impact of HIV, AIDS, and other health issues on the readiness of the South African military means that there aren't 7 infantry companies operating on the border. In fact, much of the border is largely unguarded, as we discovered from AfriForum, going up there, Jacques Broderick on the border, showing how the border is unprotected and criminal aliens invade all the time. We also see the ineptitude of authorities at Bite Bridge, who allow busloads of criminal aliens to invade the country. We saw that recently when it took a truck driver to help force a bus off the road full of criminal alien invaders from Ethiopia. who were on a bus. Now, how do they get through the border crossing? Does someone slip a little baksheesh into the pocket of a corrupt border official? Why aren't senior officials in the police, in the Justice Department, at the border, checking this activity? They never go there. They allow this criminal activity to take place and let people flood in South Africa. South Africa is full of millions of people who have no business there. No business. Now, it also has millions of legitimate legal folks there. They allow all these criminals to invade South Africa. Meanwhile, when Roy Bennett, the former Deputy Agricultural Minister and Member of Parliament from Zimbabwe, because he was white, that wasn't why he sought asylum. He was persecuted and he was attacked by Mugabe's government because he was white and because 99% of black folks voted for him. They didn't like that. He fled to South Africa and sought asylum when they tried to kill him. The South African government denied him asylum, political asylum. Yeah, they denied him political asylum, while they give succor to Omar Bashir and they protect Vladimir Putin. This same government of South Africa under the ANC denied Roy Bennett political asylum. Unbelievable. Roy and his wife, unfortunately, sadly, died in a helicopter crash a couple years ago, just before Morgan Tsvangirai died from cancer. The founders and leaders of the Movement for Democratic Change, which has been destroyed by the corrupt ZANU-PF political machine in Zimbabwe. And its replacement, CCC, is now being destroyed by extra-legal, illegitimate removal of CCC ministers from Parliament by someone who's not even a CCC, claiming they're not actually the people they claim to be. And now ZANU is stealing results and has a supermajority in Parliament. There is no hope for Zimbabwe. And South Africa is rapidly approaching that stage. It will be up to South Africans to go to the polls in 2024 to change the trajectory, or you will suffer the same fate as Zimbabwe. Chronic hunger, massive corruption, only the elites living good lives, the rest suffering immensely. No, Tony, they're not 50,000 New York Police Department members. There were 42,000 before the summer of 2020. That number has declined significantly since then. Last report I saw, there were at least 3,900 officers who had retired or quit the police force, taking them below 40,000 as a consequence of the abuse of the police. Yep. Yeah. Anyway, Nigerians have named, okay, our powers that be are like catch. I don't know what that is. I have no idea what Val Cooper's saying there in a tumble dryer. Tony says copy. Yeah, no, Tony, I don't know the exact number right now, but I know that it's supposedly purported below 40,000. But yeah, it's a good, if that was a guess on your part, Tony, 50,000, that's a pretty good guess. I mean, that 42,000, that is that's over 1/5. That's about 23% of the total force structure of the South African Police Service. South African Police Service only 4 times larger than the entire New York City Police Department. New York City is a city of 9 million people. South Africa's country has 63 million. So if we extrapolate that, right, population-wise, so if New York City had 4 times as many cops, they'd have 160,000 for a city of 36 million. It would still be twice as many cops as South Africa has for its entire country. Yep. Blow pros to Austrian, yes. Well, congratulations on that, Garrett. That's pretty cool. That's awesome. It was a guess. It was a good guess, Tony. It's a pretty darn good guess. Yeah, it's a very good one. Yeah, so you can imagine the USA has over 800,000 law enforcement officials of all sorts and all levels. We have federal police like Park Police. The Park Service has their own police. We have Customs and Border Control agents. We have FBI agents. We have military police. We have Capitol Police. These are all federal law enforcement officials, and there's different ones altogether. Those are just some of them. Then we have state police all over the country. These are the state troopers you typically see on the highways handing out tickets. I'm not sure what else it is they do. Then we have the U.S. Marshal Service at the federal level, which are officials. You have in Texas the Texas Rangers, which is a state police organization, a little bit different. And then you have municipal cops like New York, but you have them in Philadelphia and Chicago and D.C., Atlanta, all over the country. Then you have county sheriffs, and then we also have local police, township police. Yep, we have cops of every sort all over the country, over 800,000 law enforcement officials. Yeah. Now the biggest has got a criminal in the ICJ. I have no idea what Christine's talking about. Railway police. Yeah, but the railway police were, oh, you mean in Canada? In Canada has railway police. I was unaware of that. I didn't know they had railway police. South Africa used to have railway police, but they destroyed them and they're gone. And look what's happened to the rails because there's no cops there anymore. Yep. That's the reality we're dealing with, folks. It's crazy world, crazy world. People get away with all kinds of nonsense. They really do. And it's a shame. It's a tragedy. But it is the world. Yeah, they're fully armed. Well, that's good, Tony, except that we've seen that the Mounties are repressive and go after law-abiding citizens like the truckers and Arthur Pawlowski. That's what they do. They abuse. And also we see the protection details for the Deputy Prime Minister assaulting David Menzies and then trying to arrest him for assaulting a police officer when clearly it was a police officer who initiated the contact and intentionally hit and bumped into David Menzies, trying to fabricate a reason to arrest him. This is the conduct. And this is a sort of behavior that undermines credibility and trust in law enforcement. Virtually all police officers are law-abiding, honest citizens. Like in any cohort, there's always a small number of malcontents or criminals who are involved who abuse their authority. Now, that's a shame. And we saw that in the case of David Menzies in Canada when he tried to interview on the street, walking down the sidewalk, the Deputy Prime Minister for their failure to execute policy in Canada. The bodyguard on the video moved in front of a pillar as they approached the front entrance to block the walkway of David Menzies, a reporter who was walking alongside the Deputy Prime Minister. And he happened to catch the cop moving, so he moved inwards to avoid him so he wouldn't run into him. Then the cop leaned into him to bump him. They arrested him for assaulting a police officer, a totally fabricated story. This is what goes on in the criminal regime of Canada. Canada is gone, folks. It's not a law-abiding nation. It is not a society based on the rule of law. It is a society based on the elites who do what they want and punish those who oppose them, which is what's underway here in America, the same effort's underway. We see the Biden regime unconstitutionally violating our basic document by forcing, cajoling, threatening, intimidating Amazon to remove books that it doesn't like. Well, I don't like politicians, so can we remove them because we don't like them? Unbelievable. Garrett says there's a B lecture in Strand tomorrow morning. Can you make it? No, I can't make it. I'm not there. I'm here. Yep. And now that's okay. Anyway, yeah. So I didn't realize the Canadians had railway police. Well, that's probably why their rails still work. But South African rails are a disaster. They've been allowed to collapse under the ANC, which doesn't do maintenance, which doesn't protect the rails. It's just shameful, shameful nonsense. Anyway, folks, it is Tuesday, February 6th, 2024. It's a pleasure to have you all join me. Thanks for joining me today. I have to tell you, I didn't sleep very well last night. My hip was bothering me. I kept waking up. I couldn't quite get a good position to be in pain. But sitting here this morning, a lot of the pain has been taken away from that hip. But that's good to hear. Good to feel, not hear. Good to feel. Anyway, so I'm glad that that pain is gone. Listen, 54 likes, 53 current viewers. We've had 220 tune in at some point here. We've been up over 40 for the entire stream, which thank you for that for an unusual time. A lot of people are at work right now in South Africa and here in America, so people are not tuning in at this hour. So I apologize for that, but I do have other events going on, and I've got to hustle to get things done. So anyway, yeah, thank you all so much. I do appreciate it, and yeah, it is awesome stuff. Thanks for the news, Chris, says John Hoochin. Well, you're welcome, John. Thanks for being there. I do appreciate it, and you guys are awesome. I'll wrap it up here, and I'll see you tomorrow. I'm not sure if I'll do the show with Ronaldo. I'll let you know. Anyway, have a good day. I've actually got to go to the loo. A little more information than you need to hear there, but thanks a lot. Transnet lost another 24% to trucking. The roads are taking a beating. Oh, the roads are just getting obliterated by these trucks that are on roads they shouldn't be on, with loads that undermine the quality of the road and degrade it very quickly, and it's a shame. So that's it. All right, folks, we'll see you later. Take care of yourselves. God bless, and be safe out there.